Okay, now let's expand our coding with arrays into two-dimensional arrays. And what I want to do is write a function now that uses a two-dimensional array. My function is going to convert a an amount of currency in a foreign currency to United States dollars. So it's going to be called convert to USD. So I'm going to do function convert to USD, and I'm in the arrays module here. And this function is going to take two parameters, a foreign currency symbol, and that parameter, that variable, is going to be of data type string, and it's going to take another parameter that's going to have a data type of double, and this parameter is going to be called amount. And this function is going to return something that's a double, so I'm going to put as double outside the parentheses, or outside the parentheses. So you can see here's my function declaration. Function convert to USD, and then here's my two parameters. One is a string and one is a double, and then it's going to return a double. And now I want to declare my array, my two-dimensional array. So I'm going to do dim exchange rates, and I'm going to have four exchange rates. So I'm going to put 3, 2, and the 3 is because there's going to be four exchange rates. Remember that the index starts at 0, and the 2 is going to mean there's going to be three pieces of data for every exchange rate, and we'll see this in a second. And the type of this array is going to be a variant, so I put dim exchange rates 3, 2 as variant, and then I want to declare a index variable, I as integer. So now let me populate this two-dimensional array. To do that, I'm going to do exchange rate 0, 0 equals Canada. So the first exchange rate I'm going to populate in code here is the Canadian exchange rate. And the symbol for that is CAD. And the actual exchange rate, I'm just making this up, is 1.05. Just making this up. So this populates, you could think of this array as having 4 rows and 3 columns. Remember from the first array video, this is a two-dimensional array, so it's like a table in a worksheet. It has multiple rows, multiple columns. And this is sort of like the first row. Why is it the first row? Because the first index in each of these array declarations here is 0. These are all 0. So it's like the first row, and this is like the first row, the first column. And this is like the first row, second column. First row, third column. And I'm just putting data in there. First row, first column has Canada in it. Second row, or first row, second column has CAD. So this is like the first row. And as I said, this is like this two-dimensional array is like it's like something on your worksheet that has 4 rows, 3 columns. So let's complete this by populating the rest of the array by doing something like this. 1. This is going to be the second row. And this second row is going to have the Eurozone, and the symbol for that, EUR, and the exchange rate, 1.2. So there's the second exchange rate. And this, notice I just put like a title field, and then the symbol for that. This is the title field of the country that I want to do a foreign exchange transaction with. And then this is the symbol, the currency symbol, and this is the exchange rate. And the third country I'm going to deal with is Japan. and their symbol JPY, and their exchange rate 0.012. And then this is going to be like the third row, so we're almost done here. I need one more currency. It'll be in the fourth row, and that is going to be Mexico. The symbol for that is MXN, and that'll be 0.07. So notice what's going on here. There's a lot of data here, but it's structured a certain way. Like I was going before, first row, and then you have three columns, 0, 1, 2. Second row, why is it the second row? Because the index changed to 1, and there's still three columns, 0, 1, 2. Third row, because the index went from 1 to 2, there's still three columns, 0, 1, 2. And then the fourth row, why is it the fourth row? Because it went from 2 to 3, and there's still three columns. So we have 4 rows and 3 columns, and now we can loop over the exchange rates array, and then based on what the user passes in as the currency symbol and the amount, we can convert this amount to the proper amount in United States dollars. So to do that, we want to loop over an array. Like before, we use a for next loop. So for I is equal to 0. Remember, we declared I as an integer. To U bound exchange rates. And what dimension do we want to loop over? We want to loop over the first dimension. We want to loop over the rows. So we'll loop over the rows, and I'll do next I. And basically all we want to do now, so this is going to loop down the rows from 0. It's going to go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. Notice if I did this, if I looped over the second dimension, I would never get to row 4, because how many columns are there? There's 3 columns. But I have 4 exchange rates. So I need to check 4 things. The second dimension of this exchange rates array, it only has size 3, right? So this ubound, remember what the ubound function does. It's going to return either 3 if you put in the first dimension. So exchange rates comma 1 is going to return 3, and exchange rates comma 2 is going to return 2. And I put in 1 here because I want to go from 0 to 3. I don't want to go from 0 to 2. And I want to go from 0 to 3 because I want to start here and check if the symbol they pass in is CAD. Then I want to check if it is, I'll do something. But I also want to check if the symbol is EUR, if the symbol is JPY, or if the symbol is MXN. I want to check 4 times. So this will allow me to do that because I pass in the proper dimension. And then all I want to do to check it is just do this. If I'll just copy the parameter name. So if the symbol they pass in is equal to exchange rates so now I'm going to be looking at whatever row I'm in, and I want the symbol of the row. Well, that's going to be this position here at the 0 index of the second dimension, or at the first index, I'm sorry. Then I'll do something. So what I'm doing here is looping down the rows of this array, and I'm checking if the symbol they pass in is equal to whatever is in the row, whatever row I'm in, and then this 1 here, comma 1, means I'm gonna check, you know, the symbol. I'm gonna check that row and the symbol, and then I'm gonna check this row and the symbol, and then this row and the symbol. That's what the comma 1 does. It tells me where I'm at in the second dimension. I want to check the symbol. So the symbol is in the second dimension. I'm in the second index of the second dimension. I don't mean second index, I mean index number 1 of the second dimension. Notice the symbol is in index number 1 of the second dimension here. So I want to check that. So that this will do it. And if I am in the proper place where the symbol they pass in equals that symbol in the array, then my function, which again is called convert to USD, is going to be equal to the amount they pass in times exchange rates, whatever row I'm in, and then because the exchange rate is in the second index of the second dimension, I'm going to do that, comma 2, and that's it. So basically I'm looping over this exchange rates two-dimensional array, and I'm looping over the first dimension because the first dimension is sort of like the rows. And then if I match on if I match the second dimension at the first index, which is the symbol, if I match on the symbol like this, if they pass in JPY and I match on it, then I'm going to multiply the amount they pass in by whatever's in the second index of the second dimension, which is the rate. So that's what this comma 2 does. This I comma 2, it's going to give me the 3 comma 2 or 2 comma 2 or 1 comma 2 or 0 comma 2, whereas this thing here, I comma 1, is either going to be 0 comma 1 or 1 comma 1 or 2 comma 1 or 3 comma 1. So let's test this. Let's test this by passing in a symbol and seeing if we get the right answer. So if I pass in equals convert to USD, if I pass in a symbol CAD and I pass in an amount like 100 and I hit enter, I get 105. So what this is telling me is that if you have 100 Canadian dollars, it's going to be worth 105 US dollars because the exchange rate, the Canadian exchange rate, is 1.05. So our array, our function is working. If I pass in, let me pass in MXN. If I have 100 Mexican pesos, oops, remember these have to be right. That's about 7 US dollars. And it didn't work when I did all capital because when you pass in the string has to be the right capitalization, uppercase or lowercase, and I had capital M and then lowercase xn in my code, so that's why that didn't work. What this is saying though, if you want to convert 100 Mexican pesos to US dollars, it's going to be 7 US dollars. So we see that it works, but how does it work? Well, let me put a breakpoint here and just run this. Oh, I'll cancel. I can't run it. I have to go to the worksheet and press enter. Go into the cell and press enter, because you can't run a function, you need to call it somehow, and by pressing enter in this function toolbar, it'll run it. So I hit enter, and now let me just bring this up a little bit. if I show you what's in the array, notice we have what looks like to be, an array that goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, but then if you tree into it, you have 3 things in that first exchange rate 0. This is like the first row, and then those are the columns. And you can see all our arrays, our array is populated with all the data we put in it. Notice that I declared the array variant, but there's a type here that says variant string, variant double. So VBA is smart enough to know, like, whatever you pass in, it can but it knows that what you passed in to that variant array was a string, and then it was a double when I passed in the currency. You don't need to remember this. It's just, interesting to see that VBA is pretty smart. So now that I have my array, I can loop through it. And notice the upper bound, I'm going to go from 0 to what? Because I'm in the first dimension here, I'm going from 0 to 3. So this is the first dimension, 0 to 3 of the exchange rates array. It goes from 0 to 3 in the first dimension and 0 to 2 in the second dimension. So I'm going from here, from 0 to 3, because I put in first dimension is 1. And now if I step into this, I is 0. And when I is 0, well, it's Canada. I'm passing in MXN. So MXN is down here, where the first dimension has an index of 3. So I could put a breakpoint here and run this. And when it stops, if I scroll down, I is equal to 3. Because when I ran it, it didn't go into this if statement until it got to I is equal to 3. And why did it get to that? Because let me put a watch on this foreign currency symbol. So foreign currency symbol now is MXN. That is MXN, and exchange rates 3, 1, because I is 3 over here. Oops. I is 3. So let's look at exchange rates 3, 1. Go into 3, 1. It's MXN. So we have a match here. The currency symbol is MXN, and exchange rates 3, 1 is MXN. That's why it fell into this code here, because MXN here in this foreign currency symbol equaled MXN here. So it falls into this code, and then it just converts whatever they passed in, the amount, by exchange rates 1, 2, and 1, 2 is actually, or not 1, 2, I, 2. In this case, I is 3. So exchange rates 3, 2 is 0.07. So this is how it works. If you get a match on the symbol they passed in, and then as you loop through the array, it's looking for the proper symbol, and if there's a match, it multiplies by the exchange rate 0.07, and then if you hit enter, or if you run this, you get the proper result. So that's what I wanted to show you in this video. A couple things to note is populating a 2D array is not really hard. You just need to do something like this. You have 2 dimensions, so you're going to have 2 indexes. You could think of it like rows and columns, and you could just populate your array like this. You could see that in memory like we did. And then to loop through it in the first dimension, you could do this, right? You pick a dimension and you loop through it. And then you could check, again, you could loop through the array and you could check something in the first dimension, or you could check something in the second dimension. In this case, we're checking something in the first dimension of the array, this I, 1, and then we're using something in the second dimension down here, the exchange rates. So now you know how to access data that's in the first dimension of an array or in the second dimension of an array. And in the next video, we will loop through the entire array. Notice here I'm only looping over the first dimension. What if you wanted to loop over both dimensions? What if you wanted to loop over every single element in this array? In this case, we're only looping over, you know, this first dimension going from 0 to 3. But what if I wanted to I wanted to check every single element? Well, we're going to need another for next loop, and I'll show you that coming up.